In classic Hollywood, some actors and actresses hated each other so intensely that their feuds nearly brought productions, and sometimes studios, to the brink of collapse. Whenever they were forced to work together, it created chaos for directors, producers, and even their co-stars. These rivalries often caused major delays, spiraling budgets, and in some cases, left studios struggling to even pay extras. Here are 20 celebrities who never wanted to share the screen. But when they did, they made it their mission to destroy each other. Bette Davis versus Joan Crawford. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford never met a rumor they couldn't turn into ammunition. Their rivalry began in 1935 when Crawford married actor Franchot Tone, a man Davis secretly adored. Davis interpreted the wedding as a strategic blow, and hostility only deepened over 2 decades of jabs traded through columnists. When they finally shared the screen in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, the set became a battleground. In one take, Davis delivered a kick that left Crawford bruised for days. Crawford retaliated with hidden weights sewn into her costume pockets, forcing Davis to haul nearly 40 extra pounds across the floor during every drag across the room scene. Crew members whispered that Davis's backache never truly healed. Publicists loved the frenzy. Ticket sales soared. Yet neither actress relented. Upon Crawford's death in 1977, Davis quipped that it was unkind to speak ill of the dead, then added that Crawford's passing, in her view, was simply good. Decades later, their feud remains the gold standard against which every Hollywood spat is measured. Frank Sinatra vs. Marlon Brando. Blend a perfectionist crooner with a method-acting rebel and watch sparks fly. On the set of Guys and Dolls in 1955, Frank Sinatra preferred quick takes, tight schedules, and a glass of Jack Daniels the moment the director yelled, "Cut." Marlon Brando, in contrast, wanted endless rehearsal to explore every emotional shade. Sinatra's private nickname for Brando was Mumbles, a dig at the actor's famously low delivery. Brando struck back with a culinary prank. Knowing Sinatra despised cheesecake, he deliberately botched his final line in take after take, forcing Sinatra to eat a fresh slice each time because continuity demanded it. By the 11th serving, Sinatra's face matched the color of his tie, and he stormed off set, promising to throttle that mumbling lunatic. Though they finished the picture without physical blows, the Cold War was palpable. Studio insiders later claimed the pair never exchanged a friendly word again, yet their uneasy chemistry lent the film an unforgettable tension. Proof that animosity, when harnessed, can look like magic on screen. Olivia de Havilland versus Joan Fontaine. Most sibling rivalries end at the dinner table. The de Havilland sisters carried theirs onto the biggest stages in Hollywood. Olivia and Joan were born 15 months apart, competed for the same roles, and shared a single combustible dream: Oscar gold. In 1942, the Academy handed that dream to Joan for suspicion. When she rose to accept her statuette, Olivia reached out to congratulate her, but Joan sidestepped the gesture, later claiming she feared being yanked off balance by a jealous embrace. Photographs of the freeze-out flashed around the globe. 5 years later, Olivia won her own Oscar for To Each His Own. This time she rejected Joan's outstretched hand and marched backstage without a word. The sisters spoke only sporadically afterward, exchanging barbs through reporters rather than phone calls. Joan once wryly admitted, "A cutting remark from Olivia feels sharper than a sword." Their chill thawed only in tabloid speculation. Privately, the silence lasted until Joan's death in 2013. Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe. Classic stagecraft clashed with Hollywood glamour during The Prince and the Showgirl in 1956. Laurence Olivier, already knighted and steeped in Shakespeare, agreed to direct and star opposite Marilyn Monroe, who was eager to prove she could handle serious roles. Olivier believed Monroe merely needed to stand there and be sexy. Monroe, devoted to the teachings of Lee Strasberg, wanted emotional excavation in every take. Tension ballooned as Monroe arrived hours late, retreating between scenes to consult her acting coach. Olivier, growing older before the crew's eyes, sometimes muttered that he was directing a beautiful child who refuses to grow up. Monroe, stung, told confidants that Olivier treated her like a talking wax doll. Filming dragged 3 months over schedule, leaving both exhausted. While the final movie feels light and frothy, watch closely, and you can sense the frost beneath each comic beat. A silent testament to two artists who respected craft but rejected each other's methods. Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe. By 1960, Clark Gable, dubbed the King of Hollywood, valued punctuality and professionalism. Marilyn Monroe, filming The Misfits in the Nevada desert, was battling insomnia, pills, and pressure from every direction. She showed up late, forgot lines, and sometimes broke into tears before lunchtime. Gable, sweating in 100-degree heat, counted each delay like sand in an hourglass. "It'll give me a heart attack," he confided to crew members, and some believe the prediction came true. Gable died of a coronary days after shooting Wrapped. Medical historians note his strenuous stunt work and years of smoking, but onlookers remain convinced the chaos pushed him over the edge. Monroe never recovered from the accusation. Friends say she wept whenever Gable's name was mentioned, insisting she never meant him harm. Their fraught partnership left behind a haunting, elegiac film and a cautionary tale about the unseen cost of clashing temperaments. Montgomery Clift and John Wayne. When director Howard Hawks cast sensitive Montgomery Clift opposite rugged John Wayne in Red River, 1948, he essentially mixed oil and water. Wayne, a symbol of rough-hewn masculinity, felt Clift's quiet intensity was unmanly. Clift, in turn, saw Wayne as a relic of dime-store heroics. According to the set diary of hairdresser Millie DeKnight, Wayne's entourage snickered that Clift spent more time with books than with horses. Clift answered by perfecting a draw, a gunfighter's stance so convincing Hawks kept it in the final cut. Yet Wayne refused to socialize, claiming later that their philosophical divide was too wide. The tension, ironically, strengthened the film's father-son dynamic. Although Wayne later sent Clift a silver belt buckle as a peace offering, they never shared another frame of celluloid, leaving Red River as the only document of their grudging collaboration. Katherine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart. To film The African Queen, cast and crew sailed up the Congo River with crates of camera gear, canned food, and, in Bogart's case, scotch. Hepburn avoided alcohol and boiled every drop of water, yet she still contracted a vicious bout of dysentery. Bogart, smugly certain his liquor killed germs, teased her from the shade, saying, "Stick with gin, Katie, the bugs hate it." Hepburn countered in her memoir, calling Bogart an ill-mannered pirate who burped through his lines. Bogart shrugged it off, boasting to journalists that Hepburn could scold a fish out of water. Director John Huston wisely harnessed their friction. The film's anxious banter mirrors their real-life annoyance. Bogart carried home the only Oscar of his career, while Hepburn admitted later that the rough shoot and rougher company had, in fact, toughened her craft. Their quarrel, though uncomfortable at the time, paved the way for cinematic chemistry that has charmed audiences ever since. Vivien Leigh and Marlon Brando. During A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951, Vivien Leigh arrived with decades of classical training. Marlon Brando showed up brandishing raw emotional power. Lee's fragile portrayal of Blanche Dubois drained her mentally, while Brando prowled the set with effortless energy. Co-star Kim Hunter recalled Lee trembling after each scene, while Brando strolled away, whistling as if nothing had happened. Brando occasionally mocked Lee's lilting diction, prompting her to chide him about proper grammar. Lee admitted to reporters that sharing the stage with Brando felt like wrestling a live wire. Dangerous, but exhilarating. The strain contributed to Lee's lifelong battle with mental illness, yet it also pushed her to an Oscar-winning performance. Their uneasy alliance forever changed screen acting. It proved that polished theatrical technique and raw method realism could inhabit the same frame, and set sparks wherever they met. Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe. On the surface, some like it, hot is pure frothy fun. Beneath the comedy, Tony Curtis endured take after take of Marilyn Monroe missing simple cues. After yet another 20-minute stall, a frustrated Curtis quipped to a grip that kissing Monroe was like kissing Hitler. Word traveled faster than a studio memo, and soon Monroe heard the insult secondhand. Rather than explode, she withdrew into icy politeness, delivering perfect takes while refusing casual conversation. Curtis, now feeling guilty, insisted to columnists later that the remark was a joke gone wrong. Director Billy Wilder reportedly told them both to save the fireworks for the press, knowing tension sometimes fuels spontaneity. The finished film glows with sparkling chemistry, proof that performers do not need affection to create cinematic love. Still, Curtis spent years apologizing in interviews, convinced those 4 careless words shadowed his partnership with Monroe forever. Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge. Johnny Guitar, 1954, is remembered for its fiery dialogue, but the backstage battles were hotter. Joan Crawford viewed co-star Mercedes McCambridge as an interloper stealing her spotlight. One afternoon, Crawford allegedly dumped McCambridge's costumes onto a dirt road and ran them over with her car. In return, McCambridge spiked Crawford's beloved Pepsi with gin, predicting it would loosen her rival's temper even further. Director Nicholas Ray observed the meltdown with mixed horror and delight, later admitting their real hatred sold every close-up. Crew members braced for fistfights. None came, but barbed comments flew like bullets. After Rap, Crawford reportedly told the studio she'd refuse any future project featuring McCambridge. The actresses never worked together again, but the venom preserved on film has captivated audiences for generations. Orson Welles and William Randolph Hearst. Although William Randolph Hearst was not an actor, his vendetta against Orson Welles over Citizen Kane played like a cinematic thriller. Recognizing unflattering parallels between himself and the fictional media baron Charles Foster Kane, Hearst unleashed the full power of his newspapers to crush Welles's career. Editorials labeled the young director a communist sympathizer. Theater owners reported anonymous threats of advertising boycotts. On opening night in San Francisco, Welles and Hearst found themselves in the same hotel elevator. Welles invited the tycoon to attend the premiere with him. Hearst stared straight ahead. As the doors closed, Welles murmured that the real Kane would have accepted. Hearst never forgave the slight. Citizen Kane earned rave reviews, but suffered at the box office due to limited bookings. History, however, has the last word. Welles's film now tops countless greatest-ever lists, while Hearst's attempted censorship stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of power wielded without restraint. Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor. Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor started as best friends, even sharing gowns for studio galas. The friendship shattered in 1958 after Taylor's husband, producer Mike Todd, died in a plane crash. Reynolds's husband, crooner Eddie Fisher, comforted Taylor, and soon moved into her Beverly Hills home. Gossip columns screamed betrayal, and Reynolds signed divorce papers on a cruise liner to avoid reporters. Taylor married Fisher a few days later, cementing the tabloid narrative. Reynolds later recalled locking herself in a cabin bathroom and sobbing until the ship docked. Years passed before a chance meeting on the ocean liner Queen Elizabeth thawed the ice. Reynolds broke the tension by joking, "We just ran out of husbands," and the women eventually rekindled a cordial friendship. Taylor later sent Reynolds a sapphire bracelet as a final olive branch. Their story remains one of Hollywood's most dramatic examples of friends turned rivals and, finally, uneasy allies. Betty Hutton and Howard Keel. When Betty Hutton replaced Judy Garland in Annie Get Your Gun, 1950, she arrived determined to justify the studio's gamble. Fresh-faced Howard Keel, making his MGM debut, quickly learned that Hutton's boundless energy came with a cost: perfectionism. Keel later wrote that one dance number took 35 takes because Hutton felt the lighting didn't flatter her. Hutton shot back in her memoir that Keel planted his enormous boots on her mark, blocking the camera and undermining her timing. Crew loyalty split down gender lines, with veteran technicians siding with the easygoing Keel and wardrobe staff supporting Hutton. The atmosphere grew so tense that Keel and Hutton filmed their duet scenes separately whenever possible. Years later, Keel admitted Hutton's drive had pushed him to improve, while Hutton conceded that the young baritone eventually grew into those boots. Unfortunately, they never shared a soundstage again. Tallulah Bankhead and Bette Davis. Tallulah Bankhead possessed a voice like smoked velvet and a wit sharp enough to slice marble. She accused Bette Davis of poaching her Broadway roles, and once introduced herself by purring, "So you're the woman who imitates me on screen." Davis, unfazed, dismissed Bankhead as far too theatrical for film. Columnists delighted in their verbal sparring. At a party, Bankhead reportedly quipped, "There's nothing I wouldn't say to Bette's face, both of them," a reference to Davis's practiced expressions. Davis responded by calling Bankhead's performances card tricks compared to her own full deck. The pair never agreed to appear in the same movie, perhaps sensing that any director caught between them would lose more hair than he could spare. Their feud remains famous largely for its sardonic one-liners, proof that sometimes words, not fists, deliver the deepest cuts. James Mason and Judy Garland. Filming A Star is Born, 1954, demanded marathon hours and emotional peaks, a tall order for Judy Garland, who was already battling insomnia and prescription drug dependence. Co-star James Mason, disciplined and punctual, became frustrated as schedules slipped. Yet when reporters circled, Mason defended Garland, saying she was never temperamental, only tragically tired. Privately, he confided to friends that production felt like working with porcelain, priceless but breakable. Studio executives, worried about budget overruns, slashed the film after its premiere. Garland watched her hard-fought scenes hit the editing room floor. Mason stood beside her at test screenings, whispering encouragement. Their relationship, equal parts irritation and compassion, illustrates that a feud can sometimes soften into reluctant friendship, especially when two artists are steeling each other against a studio's unforgiving timetable. Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. For a decade, Martin and Lewis were the hottest act in show business. But behind the scenes, their friendship eroded under the weight of creative differences. Martin wanted more crooner romance. Lewis craved slapstick chaos. By 1956, they were arguing between takes and refusing to share dressing rooms. When the team finally split, neither spoke publicly of the other for 20 years. The thaw came in 1976, during Lewis's Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon. Frank Sinatra marched Dean Martin on stage without warning. Lewis's eyes widened. The audience roared. The two embraced, but backstage Martin joked, "I'm only here because Frank kidnapped me." Although they never fully restored their partnership, late-night phone calls resumed. Lewis later described their bond as a marriage without the paperwork, messy but unforgettable. Walter Matthau and Barbra Streisand. Hello, Dolly, 1969, paired 28-year-old Barbra Streisand, fresh off Oscar glory, with seasoned curmudgeon Walter Matthau. Streisand loved technical precision, requesting extra takes for the slightest vocal glitch. Matthau, who prized spontaneity, thought she was wasting film stock. One afternoon, Matthau exploded, shouting that Streisand might be the singer, but he was the actor, and claimed she had no more talent than a butterfly's fart. Streisand responded with practiced politeness, later teasing on The Tonight Show that she had never studied insect anatomy. Director Gene Kelly separated the stars during setups, communicating through assistants. Despite their friction, the musical remains a technicolor spectacle, and viewers can't detect a hint of off-screen hostility, evidence that professionalism sometimes triumphs over personal distaste. Greta Garbo and Norma Shearer. In early 1930s, MGM box office supremacy rested on two shoulders, Greta Garbo's and Norma Shearer's. Shearer, married to production chief Irving Thalberg, used her influence to secure prestige projects. Garbo, fiercely independent, shunned studio soirees and insisted on script approval. Memoirs from MGM executives reveal Shearer lobbying Thalberg not to hand Garbo choice romantic leads. Garbo retaliated by refusing any role Shearer had rejected, quipping that she preferred knitting socks to recycling cast-offs. Publicly, both women smiled for newsreel cameras. Privately, each measured her salary against the other's. The rivalry dissolved after Thalberg's untimely death in 1936 and Garbo's retirement 5 years later. Yet fans still debate whose reign was truly supreme, a question perhaps impossible to answer, since the two divas carefully avoided sharing a frame. Errol Flynn and Bette Davis. During the private lives of Elizabeth and Essex, 1939, Bette Davis campaigned for Laurence Olivier to play opposite her. The studio chose Errol Flynn, labeling him the Adventure King. Davis dismissed him as a pretty face with no soul. Flynn, hearing the insult, began mocking her haughty posture, claiming she rehearsed in front of a mirror like a drill sergeant. Their animosity peaked during a rehearsal in which Davis, playing Queen Elizabeth I, was supposed to slap Flynn. She struck so hard he threatened to knock her teeth out if she did it again. Davis, ever the professional, switched to a stage slap for the actual take, but the tension pulses through the film. Although box office numbers were strong, both vowed never to collaborate again. True to their word, they kept separate cinematic kingdoms, forever linked by one fiery courtship on camera, and a battle of egos behind it. Ava Gardner and Howard Hughes. Ava Gardner first encountered billionaire Howard Hughes in the early 1940s. Their romance quickly soured as Hughes's controlling behavior surfaced. He wired her telephone, shadowed her dates, and sometimes parked outside her house for hours. Gardner, never one to mince words, is documented in screenplay notes for The Aviator, shouting that everyone had warned her Hughes was a lunatic, and she now saw the truth. In her memoir, she described him as painfully shy, yet more eccentric than anyone she had met, leaving her torn between fear and pity. When Hughes tried to win her back with wildly expensive gifts, a customized airplane engine among them, Gardner responded by hurling ashtrays across his Beverly Hills hotel suite. The toxic dance dragged on for nearly 2 decades until Gardner moved to Spain, declaring that physical distance was the only restraining order Hughes would respect. Their saga endures as a stark reminder that obsession and love rarely share the same cockpit. Feuds are the dark matter of Hollywood, invisible on the marquee, yet powerful enough to bend careers, ruin friendships, and, paradoxically, create unforgettable art. We've toured 20 of the fiercest rivalries ever projected onto silver screens, from the blistering one-liners of Bette Davis to the jealous crusade of a media tycoon determined to silence Orson Welles. Time has sanded the sharp edges of many disputes, yet echoes remain. In memoirs, in documentaries, and in the electrifying tension you can still feel whenever 2 sworn enemies share a close-up. Perhaps that's why audiences keep coming back. A perfect performance is compelling, but a perfect performance forged in real conflict is irresistible. If you enjoyed this journey through Hollywood's secret battlefields, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. There are countless more tales lurking in the studio vaults, waiting for their next close-up. Until then, keep the popcorn warm and the curtain ready to rise. After all, in Tinseltown, the show and the drama never truly ends.